So I had a video drop into my realm. Sounds quite Game of Thronesy. I had someone share this video link with me, and it's a YouTube rant. It's a rant by a girl called Keely June, who's a fashion and beauty photographer, and the video is entitled "Photographers I Really Can't Stand." And to be fair, I'll link it below. The premise of the video, 10 minutes, 22 seconds of it, is actually very sound. It talks a lot about the fact that more established and more kind of set in their ways photographers are often very critical and very clinical in how they provide feedback to up-and-coming photographers who they don't really understand their style and all that kind of thing.
People in particular who tend to be quite harsh in the way that they speak to other photographers, in the way that they critique their work. And I'm not really talking about constructive criticism here. In fact, it's not constructive at all. It's just criticism, and it's criticism at its lowest point, I feel, within photography, and it belongs to kind of like a select group of people.
So
and
you get very harsh criticisms that are meant to be helpful, but they really aren't because of how they're kind of interpreted, how they're delivered. So you get people who will say things like, you're using the wrong lens and you're using the wrong light and you're using the wrong setup and you should be doing this and you should be doing that. And a lot of that's kind of like old guard photography, and that's fine, and they don't particularly understand the new crop of up and coming photographers like us. The thing I took offence with, if that's the right phrase, is where Keely talks about there being creative photographers and very technical photographers.
I feel like a lot of the time with photography, there's a lot of people who enjoy the technical side of photography, and then there's a lot of people that enjoy the creative side of photography. And I think a lot of the time there's people that will fall into, you know, either one of those categories. And I'm not...
And often the people who bitch and moan and tell you doing it wrong and tell you you're not doing it as industry standard and how the rules and accepted protocols of photography should be are often the technical photographers.
And I find that there is a particular group of people, this is what my rant's going to be about, and they are generally technical photographers. And when I say technical photographers, I don't really mean technical photographers, I just mean jerks, basically, because that's what they are. And they love to comment on other people's work, or they love to confront people on the fact that they're not doing photography right. They're not using the right lenses for certain things. They're not using their camera right. They're not taking photos in the correct composition. They're not doing things to the rules, basically.
And that's kind of the thing I take offence with. Not that you get grumpy old keyboard warriors, because they exist anyway, but the fact that a technical photographer is a different thing to a creative photographer, I think isn't quite true, especially these days. If you're a professional photographer who regularly gets work, you have to be both. Like, if you want to go down the dedicated kind of like creative route, if you really want to be that ultra creative photographer who like really pushes the boundaries and who really kind of moves that genre forward, or who really wants to be cutting edge, then actually you need to have a really, really good grounding in technical, and you need to understand how that camera works, and you need to understand how that lens works, and you need to understand how the settings that you deploy in that camera, no matter how you deploy them, whether that's in a shutter priority mode or an aperture mode or a manual mode, you need to understand how one setting affects all the others. And if you don't know the technicalities of that, and you don't know your frames per second on your shutter when you're bursting through sequences of stuff, or you don't understand the difference between f2.8 and f32, then there's something wrong. And like, you can be ultra creative and you can do this really, really creative work, but you need to understand that camera and you need to understand those lenses. Now, I can't sit and have very detailed technological conversations with photographers who understand sensor sizes and this processor and that processor and all the intricacies. There are people like that, and I love those nerds and they're awesome. However, that doesn't mean that you can just disregard all of that technicality of those cameras and all the technical aspect of what you do and just take photos. Because if you want to be sustainable as a commercial photographer, i.e. someone who gets paid to do it on a regular basis, who works commercially with brands and all that kind of stuff, you need to understand how that camera works, because that's what unlocks your creativity. Otherwise, you're just kind of winging it all the time, and that's not a safe place to be if you're any kind of professional photographer, whether that's sports like me, whether that's fashion and beauty, whether that's landscape, blah, 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 doesn't matter. You can be creative as you want, but if you don't understand the technicalities of that machine that you're pointing at that subject, then you've got an issue, in my opinion. And that's the bit I take premise with. Keyboard warriors, people who tell you, that's not how it's done, and you can't do it like this, and you should be using this lens, and blah, 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 blah. There are hundreds of those out there, thousands of those, millions of those probably out there, and they'll tell you the same story all the time, and that is a little bit of them being challenged in the industry now by newer people who are coming in. But I really don't think you can split creative photographers and technical photographers, not at the top end level. That top end level, those really good ones, do both, and that's why they're as good as they are, because if they didn't do both, then what's the point? You can't just wing it on creativity all the time. It gets you to a certain level, but after that it's gone. Now I appreciate this video is 2 years old. It's probably over 2 years old actually, 3 years old, so it was January the 15th 2017, but it ended up on my radar today, which is why I kind of wanted to talk about, not because it's a gripe, not because it's a moan, but because I want people watching my channel and looking at my stuff to understand that in order to be a photographer who does well commercially and professionally, you need to be able to be highly creative and do really, really good stuff, but also understand how all those settings relate to each other, what that lens choice means. Why would you pick a 24mm lens against a 200mm lens? Why do you have that difference? Do you, for sports in my industry, why are you picking a 200mm lens when you could shoot on a 400mm lens, but actually you're on a crop sensor, so you already get 320mm anyway on that 200mm lens on your crop censored camera? So understanding all of that stuff enables you to be more creative. Whether you use that creativity or not, that's by the by, but in order to be really successful, you've got to do both. You can't just be one. You can't sit in the technical camp and you can't sit in the creative camp. And if you're the kind of person who's watching this, who bitches and moans at other people and tells them that they can't shoot like this, shoot like that, they aren't composing correctly, they're not holding the camera right, etc., you're an idiot, and please don't reply on these channels because you don't help people. It's not helpful at all. Please don't sit there if you're a photographer and think that you can just be creative or you can just be technical. You need to marry both, because if you don't, you're never going to get anywhere particularly. That's my rant. It wasn't a planned video rant at all today. It's not what I intended to do. I wasn't actually going to record a video today at all. But hey, there you go. So, like and comment, do what you need to do. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Share it around. I'm going to pop some video out in the next couple of days as well. There's going to be quite a bit going on because I go to the Dominican Republic next week. That's a 5-day trip out to the Santo Domingo World Cup round for triathlon. Last World Cup round, I think, of the year, which will be pretty neat. We should have some fun with that, and I'm going to take my cameras obviously with me because I'm working, but I'll vlog the whole thing if I can, if I remember. My biggest thing with vlogging is I forget to do an ending to a vlog. That's a downside of mine. They kind of just finish a bit sharply, but anyway, I'm ranting and I'm raving and I've now got off the topic. So I'm going, it's time to eat. See ya.